and welcome to another Boba Joe show. Hope you're ready to do some high kicks.
Some high kicks. You're gonna be hit with so many rights. You're gonna be begging for a laugh.
I was begging for a left when I was born. I was like,
Hello, folks. Hope you're ready to be invaded.
in a nice way, in a friendly way, by Chuck Norris, not by a bad man from like prison or anything like that. No, we're talking about
Yes.
Invasion USA, one of the canon films. Like Chuck Norris had a pretty good run in the 80s while he kicked off in the 70s doing some like basic films and that, as well as being a um, full contact karate or karate competition fighter along with other martial arts, and friends of Bruce Lee, of course, and famously appeared in that Way of the Dragon scene, doing all those big famous high kicks he's known for. But yeah, he did a bunch of films in the 80s with canon films like Delta Force, Invasion of USA, Missing in Action, which are all quite enjoyable, as well as all the other ones he did for various, bigger, more notable studios and such.
Yeah, Canon Pictures, or that Canon company, is probably a topic by itself that's worthy of
Yeah, yeah.
discussion someday for the show, because they have quite the
Well,
catalog of iconic movies from the
is that
80s and
that
early
ninja
90s.
film, that one like Michael French always talks about, that Ninjas 3? Was that a canon film? Or?
I think that may be a Canon film. It's definitely one of those small,
Yeah,
straight to VHS type of companies.
it
So,
really depends on who they had working on their films. They did like some absolute trash, and they actually did some really good stuff as well.
well, like the film we're going to talk about today, Invasion USA, it's actually shocking how good this movie looks for something that
Yeah,
was made for quite little. Even though, as far as canon movies go, I do think the budget on this one was a little bit higher than the norm, but still, it's very, very impressive for the resources that they had available to them.
yeah, it's a
It just looks
fun
great.
film, and it's kind of an odd film too in a ways when you watch it. It's really like a lot of the scenes and locations seem to be like, well, this is somewhere we could get a permit to shoot or something. It's like there's a lot of kind of disconnected scenes and moments that are bookended by the action and practical stunts that kick off in the second half of the film. And for a Chuck Norris film, not a hell of a lot happens in the first 30 minutes. There's a little bit of like, well, we're establishing the character, but you're kind of like, is somebody going to fire a gun or punch someone sometime? Like, what's happening in this film?
Especially as relates to Chuck's character, because the first part of the film is the government trying to convince him to do something, like trying to come out of
Yeah,
retirement and do something.
in that
The
Rambo
bad
kind of
guys,
way.
on
It's
the
like, we
other
need you to
hand,
come back. And he's like, no.
the bad guys don't get away with literal murder for the first segment of the film because Chuck's not doing anything. Like, I was actually because it'd been a good few years since I'd watched this, I
Yeah.
kind of forgot that the opening, say, 5 minutes of the movie, maybe 5 or 6 minutes of the movie, some of the most violent stuff I'd actually watched in ages. There's that bit at the beginning
Of
where
the
you have
boat
all
scene.
the Cuban refugees on the
Yeah.
boats, and then we
They just get
see
executed, like, horribly.
yeah, yeah, cold-blooded executions. And then in the scene, I think straight after that, where we have the main bad guy doing like a weapons deal with the drug dealer, and
Billy
he
Drago.
yes, he
And the
he
German guy the German guy is like a villain, but Billy Drago makes a cameo appearance and gets killed very early in the film.
yeah, very early. It's actually a shame that he wasn't one of the more prominent,
Yeah, maybe they couldn't
bad
afford him.
guys.
It's like maybe their budget was.
Maybe, maybe. But yeah, because that's when that whole scene where he's selling the dope, it's pretty brutal. He the main villain, like, he shoots him in the nuts like several times. He doesn't just kill him, like he's like, blowing a hole through his fucking dick, like, so yeah, it's pretty brutal. But after that, things kind of like calm down a bit, and it's we have to wait a while before we see Chuck get into any type of real action that isn't wrestling alligators for his mate's local business or whatever type of
He's like the
deal he's
crocodile at
got
the
going
start of the
on.
film, or the Florida equivalent.
Yes, Actually, am I? What is it? Is it a crocodile or is it an alligator? You probably know the
I
difference.
always get confused. Like one thing's like salt water and one thing's not, or something. But they are different. One's narrow and skinny, and the other one's a wider and bigger head. Like I think like crocs have like wider, but like leatherhead and turtles have bigger head, and alligators are kind of skinnier. But I always mix them up.
I think Florida is famous for the gators, isn't it? And that's where
Yeah,
is that where Chuck is supposed to be living in this movie?
yeah, it's definitely Florida. Because remember that on the boats with the Cubans, the little kids like, "Are we going to be in Florida soon?" And then the dad's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." And then they get all killed moments later.
One thing this movie has that I love is some hovercraft action. There's a lot of
Yeah,
skimming across the swamps on the hovercraft,
seen
even
that in a lot
before
of
the
films, but
action
I never get
scenes.
tired of it because it's a very unique way of getting about.
Yeah, and it's just something, because I suppose it's a mode of transport that's only really suited to very specific locations. So unless, you're watching something that's set in a swamp, I can think there's one of the Roger Moore Bonds has a good hovercraft chase from
Yeah,
what I remember. But yeah, the opening moments are pretty hardcore, I have to say, where we're kind of just setting up who the bad guys are for the movies.
and they're definitely bad. It's a bit of a mystery about who they are or what they're about, but they're like a ragtag group of kind of like mercenary, ex-military thugs of various nationalities who've been on, like your Metal Gear Solid Rambo kind of secret missions or mercenary missions. Because they mention a whole bunch of different countries in the first 30 minutes. And it's like, well, that guy's been here and he's been there. And I should have killed him when he was back in this place. And so the establishes as a history between Chuck and the like lead German bad guy, whatever, that he definitely wants to kill him. And it's so much so that when he runs into one of his thugs earlier in a scene at the bar and stabs him in the hand, pins his hand to a table, stop him getting away. And he's like, and he takes a pin out of a grenade after he interrogates and puts it in his hand and walks over there. Before he goes, he's like, if you see him, make sure you tell him I'm going to kill him if you survive. And he repeats that line several times in the film. Even later in the film, after there's all this carnage happening, the reporters, after Chuck gets arrested for basically being like a vigilante, kind of like Batman running around stopping the bad guys. And the reporter's like, "Do you have any messages?" Like, "Yeah." It's like, I know you're out there, and I'm going to kill you. It's just, it's like real serious, but it's also a little bit kind of comical and over the top. Where he's like, I'm definitely going to kill this guy, and the same German guy who's like the big bad guy early in the film has a dream sequence where he dreams he's getting murdered by him before it even happens, or they see each other. So he's like haunted by this guy.
He's like Chuck, his character's name is Hunter. He has this kind of legendary reputation, among the bad guys. Um, I'm just kind of looking up here. I think it's Mikhail something is the name of the lead bad guy. Mikhail Rostov, that's his
Yeah,
name. Rostov. You hear that name said loads of times in the film. So essentially, for anybody who hasn't seen it, the basic plot of the movie is that this coalition of Cuban and Soviet influenced terrorists are going to infiltrate America and essentially bring down the country, and they plan on doing this by causing a load of essentially these kind of false flag operations where they're going to murder a bunch of people, but they're going to blame it on the local authorities. Like they have guerrilla guys who are actually disguised as Miami cops going around and shooting up nightclubs, and this, of course, builds distrust between the general population and the police. Um, and it's one of those things where maybe back in the day it seemed like a bit of a far-fetched idea of something that could happen, but these days, when you see how easily people are manipulated by bullshit stories that they
yeah.
read on social media and just general kind of rumors and stuff that just catch fire and spread, it would probably be pretty easy, to convince a modern population of a country that this type of thing was happening and just cause complete uproar in society, especially the way misinformation spreads these days. The terrorists in this movie would probably have an even easier time of
It probably
of
would.
doing the type of thing.
Yeah, they go around causing just like all kinds of wacky instances of terror where it seems almost disconnected, but there's some sort of plan. They refer to like an operation. So they've got some kind of organization going on where they've planned out how they're going to do these moments of terror. And it's got a very like a Frank Miller kind of comic thing where it goes to the news reports and this is going on in the country and more incidents of violence are breaking out because of these incidents, and it's spreading and, you know, causing more chaos and confusion. And they appear at nighttime and all just like mow down a whole bunch of people and then just take off again. Or you see some kids out running in the streets playing, and it's like presumably it's Christmas time because they're putting up trees or leading up to Christmas, Lethal Weapon style. And then they got like a bloody bazooka and pulls up in like a pickup truck, fires into the window and blows up the house and just takes off. And people don't know what the hell's going on. And by the time any real law enforcement finds out about it, they're just like, we don't really know what's going on. We don't have the manpower to deal with this. These guys are just causing chaos and we can't even catch up with them. You know, they're just there and then they're gone again.
The movie really kind of showcases the authorities running around like headless chickens, essentially, because nobody
they're a
can
military
really get
force. They've got
grasp.
real like hardcore equipment. It's not like just some random thug with a gun. It's like they've got massive semi-automatic mounted fucking guns and like explosives and shit, and you know,
Tons of rocket launchers. It feels like every second terrorist in the movie is armed with a rocket launcher.
Yeah.
Because even that scene you just spoke about where they blow up the family home, like that's part of a scene where they more or less kind of massacre this suburban neighborhood. And the crazy thing is, I was kind of reading up a bit on the production, like before we did the show. They actually legit blew up real houses in a suburban neighborhood. Apparently there was wherever that was shot, it was like somewhere outside of Atlanta. Apparently that neighborhood was going to be demolished to make way for a new highway that was going to be built. So they got permission. They said, look, yeah, you can go and you can wreck any houses in whatever way you want, because we're going to be bulldozing. Yeah, because we're going to bulldoze down this area anyway in the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's like a dream for production value for a film.
Oh, 100%. Because that scene, it's like, whoa, because you can see like that they just blew up a couple of houses there, like they just, and it is a house with a garden, and you can see the sets,
and
swings,
it is
and
a
everything in the
real
garden.
like there's a few other explosions later in the film. They're definitely like like your pyro demo explosions, whereas this the house one, you can actually see the shockwave of the windows blowing out and stuff. It's like a proper explosion. It's not like sometimes in movies you just see balls of flame and all that, but there's always a shockwave for any kind of explosion, especially like firing something like that into a house.
I think they kind of got lucky with this movie for scenarios like that kind of falling into their lap, because later on when we see the scene where they're kind of like blowing up a shopping mall and destroying a shopping mall, apparently that shopping mall was also another building that was designated to be like demolished and refurbished. So they
What
also
about the
got carte
Nissan? Was that
blanche.
meant to be condemned? Because that was a nice Nissan that they stole and drove to the wall.
It was a nice Nissan, yeah. I wonder I suppose they were advertising Nissan, or were they trying to say
Because you see
Nissan
it
is
very
what
prominently. It's
terrorists
one of
use?
those mall cars like you see, even occasionally see it here, where it's you go to a shopping mall, there's just a car in the middle of the bloody mall on a pedestal, like you can win it or a competition or whatever.
In some, I believe there's even a kind of a tired security guard minding the car. He's chasing
Yeah,
some kid with like spitting gum on.
it's like playing out that scene in Vice City, where Tommy Vercetti, you can go into the shopping mall and steal the display car and that and hoon around the mall. It's like that, but real life.
But yeah, like we were saying earlier, even though canon movies in general, you would expect a relatively low budget, but because of how things worked out so favorably for the producers of this movie, everything, or at least most of the stuff in it, looks pretty top notch. Like it looks like the type of
Yeah,
movie you could actually put in the cinema with a wide theatrical release, and
yeah,
it would be accepted. And I do think it did have at least some type of limited theatrical release. I don't think it was like totally like straight to straight to video or
I
whatever.
think
Like there
like
was
Chuck was probably their most consistent bankable star for Canon because He-Man obviously was a big failure because they ran out of money and never finished the film. And Superman 4 was like the other studios didn't want to do it, so the only reason they got it it's like no one really wanted to make that. And I mean, you've got like Cobra and Stallone and all that, which is kind of like cheesy. It's so bad it's good sort of thing. But the Chuck Norris ones are probably the consistently decent films they did with Cannon.
And with depending, obviously, like Chuck these days, he's a bit of a legendary status. Whereas back in the day, like I was looking at some of the contemporary reviews for this movie at the time, like they were taking just a big dump on the plot of the movie and on Chuck's acting, and like I was like Ebert gave it like half a star or something. He just
Yeah, I
hated
would
it.
expect them to, because they're not. I mean, it's as good as the production values are. You're still just a step or two away from 70s grindhouse. That's really the style of all the Cannon films. But it's also the style of like Ozploitation films of the 70s that did practical stunts and driving cars off cliffs and shit, and no insurance and no permission to do stuff, or Mad Max style, just turn up on a road, do stuff, and then get out of there before anyone knows what happened about it. So it's that kind of thing, So I don't expect genuine film critics to really enjoy it or say anything complimentary. But the Norris stuff started off in the 70s, like his early films, and his characters are similar to like the Dirty Harry and Detective Callahan sort of stuff. Like his character, he's more like that, or a John Wayne sort of character than he is like, say, Stallone or Schwarzenegger, because he's not a big muscle guy, but he's a genuine martial artist in multiple different styles. Like he's black belt in about 5 different bloody styles, as well as starting all his schools and all that for kids for martial arts stuff. But you can see they kind of pivoted in the 80s, especially in the Cannon stuff, when the big, when the big mid 80s action movies started becoming more popular. They definitely turned Chuck to that kind of style, and along with, Van Damme and Seagal and all that.
Now, I think, with Chuck, we might have kind of mentioned this briefly when we got to the end of the Bloodsport talk last week. He probably didn't have the same type of range as someone like a Stallone or that. Like, I think it's fair to
No
say.
way. He's not a good actor, but I love him. It's like,
No.
he's great at doing what he does. He's like Charles Bronson in Death Wish, or Jason Statham in every film you've ever seen him. He's just the same dude in every film.
Yeah. And the best type of character for him to play is essentially a series or a serious kind of, combat veteran who doesn't talk
Yeah.
too much and who just kicks ass. Like, if you can fit him into that role, then you're gold. You're good to go with
it. It works. And also, he's been a genuine martial artist for like, I don't know, like more than 50 bloody years or whatever. And he also was in the military as well, but he was in the, I think it's the Air Force, I was just having read about.
It feels like
Airman First Class. There you go. 1958, 1962. Yeah.
There's definitely like there's plenty of like kicks and stuff in this movie, and general like Chuck beating up bad guys. I would say it's not as martial arts heavy though.
Oh no, it's definitely not a martial arts one. There's just a few kicks and punches here and there. It's more like gunplay and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I actually have to say I love the gunplay in this movie. Like we've already mentioned, like the
twin Uzis, man. It's just like such an iconic thing on the poster.
Yeah, and that poster, what an iconic poster of just him standing on the street, dual wielding Uzis.
It almost feels like a Toxic Avenger Tromaville type poster. It's so just like this style of like, this era.
He's the classic though, everyman as well. I was getting Commando flashbacks at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Once again, we see a guy out with his chainsaw chopping wood.
Yeah.
How do you come across as a manly man? You go outside and you chop some fucking wood with a chainsaw.
and when your special elite super secret unit you've retired from a few years, when they come and find you in your personal time and then like, we really need you back, like you're the best of the best, we need you, like, nah, I'm good, mate. We'll see you later, catch you later. I'm busy just chopping wood, looking manly in the woods. But then like later in the film, when like the terrorists start going nuts, it's like, and no one wants to deal with it, he's like, well, one man is going to make a difference, and he's that man. He's the only man that could do it.
Well, it always takes that extra little something. Like, in the case of
Yeah,
John Matrix and Commando, his daughter was kidnapped. With Hunter and Invasion USA, I think the terrorists like kind of his friend gets killed essentially in the crossfire
yeah.
when they go to blow up Chuck's house. So I think that's what sets him off to go on this kind of
And he gets a sense when he talks to one of the other, I don't know, whoever the other officials and stuff such are in the earlier film. He's like, I know it's that Rusov or Khrushchev. I know it's him. It's like, how do you know it's him? He's in Europe. No one's seen him for years. Like, no, I know it's him. Like he's got a psychic connection. And he just knows
yeah.
it's him.
And like it's funny, it's actually the parallels now between this and Commando. Even though there's no
Yeah,
rescue aspect
yeah,
to it, there is quite a similar attitude. The way that main villain Rostov, because he knows how badass Chuck is, and he's
yeah.
continuously warning the
And we
rest of
get the
people,
middle
oh,
America shopping malls and houses and stuff and the carnage before the id seeds.
because he's trying to like convince his other kind of superior within the terrorist organization, like, hey, we have to take out this Hunter guy now, otherwise he's going to destroy this
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
operation. And the guy's like, I do not want to spend all these resources on just one man, but
Just one
my
man. They're
God,
like, that's your
just
mistake,
one
buddy. You
man.
should have. You should have at the start of the film
Yeah.
when he was wrestling alligators and didn't have any guns on him.
And you should have also checked his house to make sure he was actually killed by the explosion instead of just,
Yeah, that's
driving off and assuming everything would be okay.
that's such a classic '80s villain mistake. It's like, let's throw a guy off a thing or explode him or shoot him and then walk away and not inspect the body in any way. Not like if it's like you watch a modern thing like Breaking Bad and it's the cartels. It's like they kill a guy, they chop him up, he's like, and they send pictures to the boss. Here he's or they take his fucking head in a box. Like, he's definitely
Yeah.
dead. There's no chance he's coming back.
They might blow up the house after they've chopped him up and made sure
Yeah,
he's
why not?
completely.
Yeah,
But they wouldn't be taking any chances. And in this film as well, especially, it's like this guy is like top notch ex special forces. You really should be being a little bit more careful and checking to
yeah.
make sure he's actually dead.
I, I, I love the contrast from the kind of opening act of the film where you see him like doing the alligator crocodile stuff and hanging out with the old guy and all that, and the bloody fan machines and stuff. It's real, kind of like rural and laid back, and he's wearing like casual clothes and stuff. And then when it gets to like action mode, for whatever reason, the uniform is just full denim, just denim vest everywhere. It's like, that's like when
Yeah.
he's like seriously going to kick some ass. And I can't think of anyone else that could like pull that look off and actually make it look cool and not cheesy. But he makes it look cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. And it's just this whole ensemble with his nice thick beard, and it's a
Yeah, and he's got
classic
the big
Chuck
cowboy
look.
belt, like yeah,
And he's actually even given the nickname Cowboy in this movie by the
yeah.
reporter, the female reporter, who's always trying to get his attention, constantly refers to him as Cowboy.
I was
It's
reading those various accolades and achievements. Like there's many that Chuck Norris has from like bloody starting karate schools to keep kids away from drugs and stuff and keep them on educating. And he's done loads of philanthropy and all kinds of things. But he's become an honorary um, Texan. I think because of the Walker Texas Radio Show, I presume that was on a before he got his honorary Texan.
That's cool. And look, I'd love to have him as an honorary Texan if I was living in Texas. And even though like the Walker Texas Ranger show could be pretty cheesy at times, but it's still
Yeah,
very
it's
entertaining.
very cheesy. It's like Magnum and MacGyver with all the rotating stories, but I still enjoy it for what it is.
And I know we'll speak about it someday. It's no Lone Wolf McQuaid. Lone Wolf McQuaid is like my favorite Chuck movie. I just love it,
Yeah,
and I
that's a
know
really
that
cool film.
Walker Texas Ranger was kind of based on that movie. Essentially,
Yeah.
I think they actually wanted to do a Lone Wolf TV show, but they just couldn't get the rights to the name.
Mhm.
I think that's how Walker Texas Ranger came about. And funnily enough, talking about things that they wanted to do, apparently Canon wanted to do a direct sequel to this Invasion USA, but then Chuck ended up turning it down, and then they ended up making like Opposing Force or something like that
Yeah.
instead. But that's interesting. It would have been. I wonder where they would have went with Invasion
Mm.
USA 2 if that had happened.
be like Invasion USA, Berlin or something, or another country or something like that. Like he's
Invasion
like there
London.
as a guest, and then the terrorists strike, and he's like, "Oh, this American's got to save us, even though we hate Americans."
But yeah, like Chuck's dialogue in this movie, there's just enough
It's a real
there
Clint
that you
Eastwood
know he's a
one-liner sort of
badass.
ones, where like they're a little bit, it's like serious, but they're like slightly humorous. Some of them.
Yeah, and like yeah, there's even one bit where you know, the female reporter's like giving out shit to him because he's after like crashing a car and almost getting her killed, and he's like walking away, and she's like, "Where are you going?" It's like, I have to go before you get angry. It's like, he's going absolutely mental. It's though once we kind of kick it into high gear though, and once you know, Chuck's character Hunter actually goes on the hunt and starts taking out the bad guys, like it just starts becoming like a brutal kill fest essentially. Like he tracks
Yeah,
down that one guy who's in like the club, and you know, I think earlier in the movie the guy had injured his hand in that botched attempt to blow up or to kill Chuck. But so when he's kind of trying to get busy with a lady of the night, the lady of the night accidentally touches his injured hand. He's like, "Oh, my hand! It is so painful. You know, do not touch
yeah.
my hand." And he rests his hand down on the counter, and then we just get a shot of this knife going into his hand.
Knife,
Yeah, brilliant,
knife to see
absolutely
you.
brilliant. And yeah, I feel bad for that dude a little bit because like Chuck, that's where we get the line of you know, "I'm going to give you so many rights, you're going to be praying for a left."
Yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah. And
just
I love that.
battering a man.
That remember just before that scene, the two guys are down the stairs, polishing up their fancy like classic car, and these other assholes come driving up and smash the bucket they were using to like clean and polish it. They're already kind of rolled up and annoyed, and the friend who sees the guy in the room with the knife pin, he's like he's kind of skinny and he looks kind of tough, but he's a skinny looking dude like me. And he goes downstairs and gets his bodybuilder guy and comes back up and he's like, "What are you going to do now, tough guy?" And he's like, and he's just like, "You're beginning to annoy me." He does this big front kick and goes bam and knocks down this guy flat on his ass who's like twice his size.
Of course, he gives the bad guy his ultimatum. So the dude, he's stuck. He's got the knife in his hand, and then Chuck pulls the pin on a grenade and puts it in
Yeah.
his other
And
hand. And
the
he's
muscle
like,
guy's almost going to get up after the kick and maybe have another go. Then he sees Chuck with a grenade. He's like, "No, this guy's on a different level. I'm not going to mess with this."
because yeah, he makes the dude hold the grenade, and he's like, "If you
Yeah.
survive this, I want you to tell your boss it's time to die." You know, and the guy
He's
actually does
starting to
survive it
die.
because he's able to chuck the fucking grenade just in
Yeah.
time. You know, and like let it
And
go out the
I felt
window.
bad when it goes out the window, and you know where it's going to land next to that classic car that they were polishing, and it blows up.
Those poor dudes.
You feel
That
bad for
poor
those
car.
guys because they obviously cared about their car.
And then, of course, when the guy does deliver the message to Rostov for the second time in this movie, takes out a gun and shoots someone in the balls. So that's two times this guy has
Yeah, it's
shot
really
somebody in the
brutal.
balls.
It's like really shoving it to their pants.
It's
It's
his
not something you typically
preferred
see.
method
Like
of execution.
you might see like a Die Hard or something from across the room. Maybe someone kind of does a nut shot. This is like he's like virtually fondling him and shoving the gun right onto
Yeah.
it.
And shooting and pulling the trigger multiple times. It's not
Yeah,
just like
multiple
one
times.
shot, it's like
Yeah,
boom, boom, boom.
yeah.
He really does not tolerate failure at all, this
No.
bad guy, you know. But of course, this sends him into a rage. He's like, "No, Hunter's still alive. We have to take him out." And then he gets into the argument with his friend. It's like, "No, we will not. We will not waste all our resources on this one man." You know, but he knows better. He does know better, and it will all come back to bite them, you know, in the arse later on. But of course, it could only have happened that way, you know.
Yeah, and I like
But
we
yeah,
see
he
that terrorists do the different series of events where they're shooting people and blowing, and it's pretty brutal and horrible. And each thing they kind of escalate to doing like from a gun to like doing explosives and stuff, and it gets more and more. But then there's one where they're like going to blow up a bloody, I think it was like a church or a building or something, and like the people are there, and Chuck's already been on the roof and disarmed this bomb thing. They're walking out with the detonator trying to blow up this building of people, and Chuck's looking at them like, "Hey, it doesn't work," and he throws down the still attached to explosive, but now he's got his own detonator. Once it's on the ground, he goes boom and blows them all up.
Yeah, he's got that's one of two great moments he has with you know, turning the bombs on the bad guys, because there's another
Yeah, I
moment
just thought it
where
was so,
they
talk about instant karma. It was like just so good.
like they try and do this really horrific thing where they try and blow up a school bus full of kids.
Did you
And
know it was? I haven't watched it for years, but as soon as I saw the yellow of that school bus, I thought, "There's that yellow school bus like you see in The Simpsons or Dirty Harry. Like they're definitely going
yeah,
to try and kill these kids." And then when there was a
yeah,
whole minute scene of all the parents in town going, "All right, get on, we're going to drive out to the country. It'll be safe there," and I'm like, "No, no, it won't. Never put all your kids on a bus and send them out of town when terrorists are going around blowing everything up. That's a bad idea."
yeah, because the terrorists they drive up alongside the bus and like put this like magnetic bomb
Yeah,
on
there's
the
like
side.
sticky bomb, like put on the like C4
And
or
it's
something.
great because Chuck is able to drive up, remove it, and then catch up with the terrorists in his truck
And
and
put it on
attach it
there.
to their car.
And he's like, "You're missing this." The guys are like, "What?" It's too late. Boom, they're gone.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments of bad guys just getting the karma completely reversed on them in this movie. Like they just get totally taken out by
Yeah,
their own devices essentially,
and even the
which is a good feeling.
yeah, even like the police, and they have like the news sound bites and vox pops, and the police are like, "Oh, it's too much, and we can't handle it." But they do call them the National Guard, which makes sense because now you've got a superior armed force taking on another, armed force, and but then the terrorists start disguising themselves as members of the National Guard and killing people in
Yes.
public in the daylight.
And you know, once again, especially these days, with how misinformation spreads, like what is to stop a well organized group of
Hmm.
impersonating? You know, they could just impersonate police, they could impersonate military, go out and commit some type of atrocity. You know, footage of the atrocity spreads online quickly, and then all of a sudden you've got like civil unrest and
Yeah, yeah.
distrust of authority. And it, like I said earlier on, it probably seemed a little bit far fetched back in 1985, but these days it's kind of maybe a possibility at the very least that something like this could potentially
Yeah,
happen.
and it'd probably be easier than ever to do as far as people have got, international trade of legal weapons and guns and shit. I mean, but access to like uniforms and things that you wouldn't normally be able to get that easily. It's much easier to get stuff just in the mail now, like for all kinds of things. And
And we live in a time as well where there's so many experts that will say, "Oh no, I can categorically say this is a genuine, real footage, even though it's
yeah,
bullshit." And I'm actually causing more trouble by like spreading this
alien
around rather
autopsy.
than like
No, that was real. It was real. I tell you.
yeah, we're not going to do any critical thinking on this. We're just going to put it out there and take it as face value back. But yeah, once they start, disguising themselves as like National Guard officers, because there's even a moment I think where Chuck comes across like a checkpoint, but it's actually really the terrorists in army disguise. And like the guy
Yeah,
walks up to Chuck's truck and he's like, "Do you have any ID?" And Chuck's like, "Yeah, let me get it for you." And the guy just
boy,
kill him, but Chuck just pulls out his Uzi and just nails him.
I'm not sure if he's seen any of those guys before, but we as the audience, like that particular scene, there was like an Asian guy we saw or it might have been South American, but he had a very particular face, and even behind that, he had sunglasses. We saw him on the boat scene at the start, and we definitely know it's one of them when we see a close up of his face.
It's a little bit like we spoke about this a bit when we were talking about Scarface and the whole Cuban refugees essentially
Yeah,
coming in. And in Scarface they do make a bit of an effort to say, look, there is obviously Cuban criminals and gangsters, but there's also like good Cubans who just they want to escape poverty and
yeah.
make a better life for themselves. And I think in this movie as well they do try and showcase that, okay, yes, there's a good chunk of this force seem to be made up of Cubans, but they seem to
But there's
have been
also like
very
African American guys and
influenced.
random white
Yeah,
redneck looking
exactly.
guys.
All
They're just
sorts.
like the most ragtag bunch of dudes.
Yeah, Russians. There's all sorts just kind of thrown in. It's almost like your global terrorist organizations, like
Yeah,
whatever country you're
they're like
from.
Cobra
We
or
just want to
something,
take down
basically.
America. Yeah, yeah. It's just like we're the anti-Americans, we're the un-Americans, and
The
we need to take
international
down America.
anti-American.
if they were
But yeah, they
in the
show people like
WWF.
outside the nightclub having a good time and that, and then the fake cops turn up and say, "Hey man, why are you always harassing us?" And it feels like, I don't know, like some, yeah, 70s film or something. You know, it's like just cops being assholes and to minorities or whatever, or you know, targeting ethnic groups. It feels like that, like they're stoking up these tensions.
Yeah, and you got the impression, obviously, yeah, because there was already a tension and an element of distrust there, so it probably is pretty easy then, once you stage one of these kind of instances, to once again to rile everybody up, and think that, look, there's police brutality going on at a massive scale, but they could
And
cause
some of the,
complete chaos, absolute chaos, because
yeah,
as
like
well,
they're
like I
throwing rocks
suppose
at the police and all that. And
when you think about it as well, I had one thing I'd forgotten about, because it had been years since I'd watched a movie, and plus sometimes, little details kind of just fade from memory or whatever. But at the very beginning, or near the beginning, when the terrorists are kind of landing on the beach and getting into all these trucks, you can hear somebody like maybe speaking in Spanish or something, and you can make out that he's saying, you go to Chicago, you go to Miami, you go to New York. Like they're sending them to every state. So you've essentially got like a truck full of terrorists all going to each state and causing mayhem. So it's a pretty significant, operation of chaos that they're conducting, here on the United States of America.
yeah, it really does remind me of like a kind of Frank Miller 80s Batman sort of comic, like that sort of style to
But they didn't count on one thing. They didn't count on old Hunter,
it.
he's going to put a stop to everything. And it's funny as well, like once the government finally starts kind of playing ball and cooperating with him, he comes up with a pretty good plan to essentially lure all the terrorists into the one spot, because he knows that Rostov wants him killed. So he gets the authorities to pretty much put out a fake news report saying that, Chuck's been captured. He's believed to be a terrorist, and the FBI, the CIA, the military, they've all done this joint operation to capture him, and they're going to bring him to this particular building at this particular time. They make it very obvious on TV where
Yeah,
he's going to be, and that's enough for Rostov to say, right, I'm pulling all our forces all into the one place, and we're all going to descend on this building, and we're going to kill Hunter. And there's this great moment where you've got, like, I don't know, like 200 terrorists all coming into this building, and they're just shooting, and like they're running through
they're
these
spraying
office doors.
Uzis and automatics. They're kicking in doors and expecting to kill these police and stuff, and there's just no one in there.
Nobody there, nobody there. I just love the blatant, it's like in Predator where they just can't stop firing. It's just like leveling the building pretty much
Yeah,
with
they're just
machine
like
guns.
circle, like side to side everywhere with the guns. Like no accuracy, just shooting everything possible in the room.
Like after they've kind of swept through the building, the dude Rostov is like, okay, well, it looks like this is a trap. We better start getting out of here. But by that point, the actual US military, the real US military, has surrounded the building with
Yeah, there's like
tanks
about
and
20 tanks out there.
helicopters.
They go out. It's like holy shit!
And,
Like they
and
might
that,
have
once
barricaded the
again,
whole street with tanks.
that's some serious budget being spent right there to get all that. Because
Yeah,
that's like, it's a full street they've closed off. They've all these tanks, they've all these extras, playing military guys. Obviously, I'd say that was probably one of the biggest budget moments in the movie, was to do that in the whole
so
kind of
someone
street
must have had some
scene
good
finale.
fun. Whoever organized all those tanks, because they would have had to come from some base or outfit or wherever. So someone must have had real good fun. Go, oh, we get to drive all these cool tanks out for the movie.
And it's hard to know, like, who gets it worse. I suppose if you're the terrorists that stay inside the building, you get to die fairly quickly, because when Chuck comes across you, you're pretty dead on sight. Like, he's like,
Yep.
he's dual wielding his Uzis. He's like going from like, section of the off section, just like nailing guys left, right, and
If you
center.
get close enough to
Whereas,
him, you just get a head high kick to the face that'll just knock you out
yeah,
instantly.
whereas the boys that end up like legging it out of the building and going outside, they just start getting like hammered by the army tanks,
It's
like
like the bloody
firing on
Alamo.
them. And like,
They're just walking into a wall of guns.
oh, they get absolutely massacred. And it's one of those things where like you don't feel bad for them at all because they've caused so much chaos and
Oh, they're
damage.
such
You're
pieces
kind
of
of
shit.
cheering.
Like, I mean, they're going after school children, and I don't know if it's intentional because it's. I mean, as far as you're going terrorism, you go, we've killed we're going the men, the woman, then it's like the children and the pets, depending on how scummy they are and all that. But whether it's intentional or not, I definitely thought of like the '70s Dirty Harry, that school bus scene. That's like almost like film iconography. It's like, okay, we're going to that level. We're targeting the school children now on the bus. Like, it's like shorthand to show what pieces of shit they are.
I'm pretty sure it's so similar that the kids are even singing "Row, row, row your boat" in Invasion USA, just like they're singing it in Dirty Harry. During that scene. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised of if the director was just a big Dirty Harry fan and wanted to
Mm.
pay tribute. Speaking of the director, I'm just going to pull his name up here.
I love
Joseph
the bad German
Zito.
guy. Like his face reminded me a lot of Rutger Hauer. When I saw him, I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be bad. As soon as I saw him, and the other cop guy early in the
So
film looks like Jr.
yes, he does. He
It's like
is
you put a
very
hat on him,
JR
it's
like.
like that's like Jr. Man. Like,
So yeah, Joseph Zito is the director, but I see here for the writing credits, it was written by Chuck Norris himself and his brother Aaron Norris
oh, nice.
were writing the script. So no wonder though that the role suits Chuck so well. It was
Yeah,
literally he was probably writing it for himself. So,
yeah. I have read a couple of his books in there. He's done some semi autobiographical ones that are kind of short, easy, breezy reads, and I think he's been involved as a producer quite a lot of times in various films and that.
but when it comes down to he's clearing out that building. He's taking on the terrorists and taking them out one by one. And then eventually it comes down to Rostov being the only guy alive. And Rostov is so paranoid. When he comes across Chuck beats the piss out of him initially, but then he kind of lets him go a bit. And Rostov manages to get his hands on another rocket launcher. And you've got this great moment where Rostov is totally paranoid and he's wandering a corridor and he's like kicking in doors and he's like putting the rocket launcher in front of him. Like, as soon as I see Chuck, I'm just going to shoot him with this rocket launcher. That's exactly what's going to happen as soon as I see him. And next thing, as he's walking down the corridor, behind him, we see Chuck. And Chuck also has a rocket launcher.
Do you know what I
Chuck's
love about this scene before he gets to that bit is the way that shot and frame it. It's like we've gone to a western, and instead of having the six shooters, I've got these dueling like bazooka rocket launchers.
It's brilliant. I've never seen anything like it. So you've got Chuck with his rocket launcher, you got Rostov with his, and Rostov tries to do the quick turnabout. It's like, oh, I'll get him. But Chuck's just, he's on the ball and he just fucking puts that rocket right into his chest. And we get this great moment of like the explosion in the hallway, the guy's body being blown out the window. You can see like bits of like visceral body
You can see
parts
like a
and stuff
foot
like
flying.
flying out. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's a real kind of, well, fuck you, bad guy. Like you are dead now.
My God,
Like
he's
you are.
definitely dead because that wind he was like all the way out this big window. The whole window is shattered, and his body's just exploded until there's like nothing left of it.
I'd say like, obviously we get the dual wielding Uzis are the iconic
Yeah,
weapon of the movie, and obviously they're featured on the poster because of just the way that design is and whatever. But purely the rocket launchers have to be the MVP weapons of this movie because they're used in like
yeah.
nearly all the action scenes. Everybody has a rocket launcher, and if you don't have a rocket launcher, you've got like an underslung grenade launcher on an assault rifle. Like there's so many explosive
I think those
weapons being
terrorists
used.
before they started the movie, they were all on an episode of Oprah, and they're all locked under the seats. And guess what was there?
Free rocket launchers for
Yeah,
everybody,
everybody.
and you get a rocket launcher, and you get a rocket launcher. But yeah, no, he molds them with that rocket, and like what an explanation point to like say bye bye bad guy,
Yeah,
because
it's very much like you're off a building with like your Hans Gruber and Die Hard and that sort of thing. It's like we're definitely killing the guy, and he's definitely gone.
there's a real kind of like obviously this would never happen in real life because I'm sure they'd be fucking reprimanded for it. But when we cut to the outside of the street, like all the army guys are like going, yeah, and like, you know, holding their guns up in the air. There's like a big like celebration, like clapping and stuff. It's like, yeah, we killed all the terrorists. You know, it's such a great feeling. You know,
I would love if they
it's
did
hilarious.
like fan lore. It's like turns out like the guys like the third cousin of Hans Gruber and their brother or something.
You killed my cousin Rostov. You know,
And then you find out they're
like
all related to Dick Jones, and that's why they keep dying in similar ways, falling over things.
yeah, they should have went the route of corporate espionage instead of just, you know, classic terrorism. They might have been a bit more successful.
Yeah.
But you know, Chuck, he doesn't need like a gimmick to be a badass. He doesn't need to be like a
No,
robot from the future. He doesn't need special powers or any shit. He just needs to be himself and kick some ass.
yeah, he
He
made a
did
lot of
promise though.
good fun action films. Like I enjoy the Delta Force ones, which are like very cartoonish. It's like GI Joe, the movie, pretty much like the cartoon style, and but they're great fun. And the just mine always goes, but I always mix up. There's so many different like behind enemy lines and missing action, all the different ones of Chuck Norris and Tom Berenger and all that. Yeah, missing in action because they did three of those. But the first two, they filmed both of them like basically at the same time, the same year, and they got released in the reverse order because
Yeah,
they're kind of shot in a weird sequence.
confusing. I think for me, like my holy trinity of Chuck movies would be like, you know, Lone Wolf at the top, and then I would probably
Yeah,
say this and Delta Force are kind of then
yeah.
neck and neck for my other
Well,
ones.
we have to
I
talk
do
about
enjoy missing in
Lone
action as
Wolf
well.
later in the year.
Oh yeah. Oh look, we'll definitely be we going back to Chuck. And like I said earlier, I do think maybe at some point, sometime in the future, a general canon discussion
Yeah, that'd be cool.
could be a good
Get
one
some
because
ninjas in there.
get
I
some
love
ninjas,
it.
get some
I
good
forget whether
looking
it's the
posters.
Octagon or one of the other early Chuck ones, that, his martial art ones and ninjas and that, where it's got that opening scene where he's like, just his inner monologue, his voice, where he's not actually talking, but you can hear his voice. He's recorded, like ADR style, and he's going, "There's like, what's happened here? It's silent. There's no evidence of anything. What happened? It could have been ninjas, but wait, they don't exist." It's like just the most bizarre monologue. Like something's happened to the house or someone's broken, but there's no evidence of anything. So it must be someone silent and visible. It has to be ninjas, but they don't exist for hundreds of years.
Do you have any favorite Chuck Norris facts you'd like to hit me with?
Chuck Norris doesn't sleep; he waits.
Chuck
Do you
Norris
know what
doesn't
Chuck
go to
Norris says
sleep.
when he answers the
Sleep
phone?
comes to him. What?
Well, I'll go. Ring, ring,
Hello?
go. That's your cue to start running. That's it.
Now, one, I don't even know if this is a true story, but it is kind of, it was like an urban legend. It was definitely kind of, I used to hear in school and stuff. It was way back in like the mid 90s when he was still doing Walker, Texas Ranger. Apparently, he was out like in LA in public and he was going to a bank ATM and a couple of guys saw him and recognized him. And even though they knew who he was, as in they knew he was Chuck Norris, they assumed this all the fighting ability shit was just, you know, acting. Like they didn't think that he had any, you know, fighting acumen. So they attempted to rob him at the ATM
Seriously.
and supposedly like he beat the actual fucking piss out of them right there on the street, like, and was actually waiting there with them when the cops came to like fucking arrest him. He was just, they were both on the ground and he was just standing there waiting for the cop. I really sincerely hope it is a true story. It feels like it could be a true story. It does feel like it could be.
He's definitely capable. I mean, anyone. I mean, if you shoot anyone, the effect's the same. Eventually going to bleed out. But as far as if you haven't got a weapon, you're stupid enough to get close to someone who's like multiple black belt and fucking taekwondo, karate, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and judo, and tang sudo. He's like
I
black
just love the
belts in like five
idea.
different styles.
I just love the idea that they knew who he was. Like they knew he was a celebrity, but just assumed he was like
So
a
they didn't
phony
know he was a
fucking
full
actor.
contact fighter in the 70s before he was an actor.
No. All they knew him was this is the guy on the Texas Ranger,
That'd be
the
like,
TV
I mean,
show.
it's a different comparison now to boxing and UFC. There'd be like someone walking up and going, "I thought Muhammad Ali was just an actor, and then he punched me for some reason." Like, what? Like you didn't know?
Yeah, he just looks like the type of fella you wouldn't want to fuck with. Like even if you didn't know
Yeah.
that much about him, you kind of can look into his eyes and think, I don't think this guy is one to be trifled with. Armed or unarmed, it does not matter. And if you're armed, he'll disarm you, maybe by actually just removing your arms from their sockets.
Yeah, I
No,
haven't
I did
watched
though.
the segments, but apparently, like there's been all those like Chuck Norris facts are on the internet for years, and then they did some printed book versions of them. I have a couple of them lying around somewhere, but apparently, this you can look up on YouTube clips on Conan O'Brien where he goes on and actually he's reading when it became like a meme thing. He's on Conan O'Brien and they're actually reading out some of the Chuck Norris facts. I might have to have a look at that later tonight because I haven't watched that, and I'd like to very much like to.
Tell you one of my own little fun facts about this movie. The last time I actually watched Invasion USA was back in, I think, 2009. I was in college, and as part of an events management module I was doing, we had to like organize an event, and I had done a Chuck Norris Appreciation Day. And as part of that Appreciation Day, we had a double screening in the college, theater of Invasion USA and Missing in Action.
Nice.
And we only got like about less than 30 people showed up to watch both films, but it was just a great day to be able to kind of sit and watch them on a relatively big screen. It's like, it's your typical college auditorium, and at a decent sized projector screen and stuff we could watch the movies on. But
That's
I
awesome.
do remember at the time, the lecturer who was kind of in charge, she kind of stepped into the room to watch some of the Invasion USA, and she was just totally disgusted at what she saw. She did not enjoy it at all.
Well, we should have mentioned the part where like his other brother, the one that's not around anymore, did actually die in Vietnam, and that's what motivated him to do those missing in action ones.
Yeah, and like Missing in Action movies are great fun. They're great fun, and
So they can't
once
like
again,
he talks in his books like those films, or like he like consider them to like dedicated to his brother who did not die in Vietnam and that. And,
he's made a couple of wrestling appearances over the years as well.
yeah, it popped
Uh,
up in some WrestleManias. I think he's in episodes of WCW as well.
he is, and he probably his most famous appearances at the 1994 WWF Survivor Series, where he's the special
Yeah,
enforcer for the casket match between Yokozuna and the Undertaker.
that's right.
And he actually he hits Jeff Jarrett with a kung fu kick that's so hard that Jeff Jarrett literally like does a flip and lands on his head. So yeah, the forces, all the heels in the WWF roster at the time were just nothing. They were no match for Chuck Norris. But yeah, no, I'm glad we kind of we popped our Chuck cherry on this episode. So now the gateway has been opened into the Chuck verse.
Yeah, we can get on some other ones. This one's just like real middle '80s, and it really kind of like goes along with the theme month, because it's the end of our theme months of the '80s action cinema of the big. To me, what are the big four dudes? There's other ones, of course. I mean, if you go '70s, you got Bronson and Clint Eastwood, and of course Eastwood was still going in the '80s, but this was getting into like more gunplay and muscles and martial arts and practical explosions and cars and all that. That's those sort of films.
And maybe one of these days we could do a bit of Bronson and some Death Wish as well. Could
Yeah.
be on the cards.
Yeah, well, they
Uh,
start out as one series, and then later on, Canon got their hands on the Death Wishes as well.
what do we have coming up though for next week?
We
What
don't
is
have a set topic for next week. There's kind of a couple of ones I'm going to throw at you during the week, and we'll decide for sure. But like, I'm leaning towards maybe do a talk about like some Sega Mega Drive games or something like that next week, like a video game topic or something.
sounds good.
But
I'm
following
always
that, in the
always a big
upcoming
fan
weeks,
of
I
the
want to get into
Sega.
some more classic wrestling talks.
Well, I'm big into my classic wrestling, but of course I'm big into my 16-bit era of gaming as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, some
I
Sega
hope you don't. Hope you
classics.
don't cheat, Mark. I hope you don't cheat and put extra lives on, and then make that kind of face when you're playing video games.
Hulk Hogan was using a Game Genie his whole career.
But yeah, we'll definitely get into some the Crockett and kind of late '80s era, like your Southern wrestling and that, and get into some of those ones, like some Clash of Champions. We might touch on some AWA and a certain event that went kind of sideways.
And it's been a while, I suppose, since, because if those of our viewers, of our listeners that have been watching us now for a while, early on, if you are interested, like we have done video game discussions. If people are interested in going back, we went into great
Yeah, if you
detail
click
on
on the
Streets of
playlist
Rage.
and also the description of any episode in the recent months, click on the description, and I've linked in some of the more kind of broader general topics. Like there's a bunch of, like we did 18 MacGyver, we did some WrestleManias, and then we did like some video game. I've listed a whole bunch of stuff of like kind of like real like popular kind of topics in it that you can link straight to.
Yeah, we cast a wide net, folks. Because the way it is, like when the network says we got to reach as much people as possible, so we have to diversify our topics as much as possible. And when we go into the board meetings once a month, they kind of say, look, Boba, Johnny, you got to lean a bit more towards the video games, or you're not doing enough wrestling, and we take all this on board, because at the
We
end of the
might have
day,
to
it's
do
all
a
about
wrestling video games episode in the middle of the wrestling ones. Who knows?
could be
Anything
something to
good.
do. At the end of the day, it's just about making profit for the Boba Joe Corporation. We're willing to do whatever we need to do in order to attain those profits.
Yeah, the company was had a corporate merger last year with OCP, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah, we've actually signed NDAs. We're not really allowed to talk too much about that.
No, the agreements are lifelong and they are in perpetuity and possibly even extend beyond death. So, yeah.
If you do want to know more about that, though, you can reach out to our legal department and they will tell you to fuck off.
They won't even tell you to fuck right off.
No, that'll
Just
cost you extra.
all the way off.
All the way off. All the way off. No, I had a great time chatting about Chuck the Buck, I have to say, Johnny. Brilliant, brilliant stuff as usual. I had a great
Yeah, he's a
time
pretty
rewatching
interesting
it as
guy.
well.
Yeah, good films, interesting dude in real life. Done a hell of a talk about overachiever. He's done so much, man. If you even go on like Wikipedia and read through half the stuff that he's done in his life, he's like he's lived about 5 bloody lifetimes already.
Oh, the dude is a legit legend. No doubt. No doubt. And honestly, folks, if you're a fan of Chuck's, let us know. And if you are a fan, maybe hit us with a few suggestions as to which movies you'd like us to cover in the future. If you hate Chuck, let us know. I know my
Yeah, let
wife's
us know.
not the biggest fan of him. I
If you don't
can't
like
really
Chuck, then
explain
you're
that.
rather stuck.
Exactly. Don't get stuck not liking Chuck.
I can hear the cry of the Pedro in the background now. He's saying, "Finish up in there and pay attention to me, please."
Shut up, humans. It's our time now. Well, look, folks. As well as the board, we do also serve our cat masters too, so they
Yes,
must be attended to.
they are overlords, so we must attend to them. Okay, we'll catch you, guys and girls, on robots and people from the future, space people, aliens. Anyone else might be listening on satellite signals next time.
Take care, folks.